Hello Prof Leaders, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk to you about the sovereign wealth fund and the value of the Guyana dollar. I think these two ideas are linked, right? So in previous video I explained or discussed the fourth quarter report of the sovereign wealth fund, that is Bank of Guyana fourth quarter report of the sovereign wealth fund. That's available online, guys. You can download that report. Everyone can download that report online from the Bank of Guyana website. And in fact, they release monthly reports as well as quarterly reports. You should download all of these reports from the Bank of Guyana site, just in case they change their mind. The politicians have a way of trying to classify information as top secret. I suggest you download these reports so that you could have a copy of these reports for yourself, just in case the politicians decide to change the classification of this information. That is the financial information from the Bank of Guyana about the sovereign wealth fund. But the sovereign wealth fund has now hit 1.429 billion US dollars, as I explained in my previous video. And what I want to do today is to show you that you can use mathematics to predict the growth of the fund over some time, and then based on the growth of the fund, based on the growth of the output of the oil and gas industry, my argument is that Guyana should tie the value, the strength of the Guyana dollar to the output or the value of the sovereign wealth fund. So let's go. How do you predict the output from the oil and gas industry? Well, all of it is there in the fourth quarter report for 2022. And what that tells me is that the quarterly output from the oil and gas industry has been increasing in a way that you can predict and plot, right? So there's a graph there. I'll show you that graph now. What the graph shows is that the quarterly earnings from oil and gas for the last 3 years has grown every quarter, right? So for the last 4 quarters, that is 2022, Guyana earned 1.4 billion US dollars from oil and gas. And you can break that down by quarter. If you download the quarter reports, you'll be able to see how much money was added to the fund each quarter. In the last quarter, it was 574 million US dollars. And you can predict what it will be for this current quarter and for the remaining 3 quarters in 2023. Based on the growth, the plot, right? You can fit a curve to this growth. Based on this growth and based on the information from the quarterly report, Guyana should earn about 2 billion US dollars in 2023, which should take the total in the sovereign wealth fund to about $3.4 billion by the end of 2023. Now, if the government keeps extracting from the fund approximately $200 million per quarter, as it has done in the last 3 quarters, then you can subtract about $800 million from $3.4 billion, and what you should have remaining in the fund is about $2.6 billion in our sovereign wealth fund by the end of 2023. Now, based on the quarterly report also, we saw that ExxonMobil is planning to begin production from a new oil field, Guyana, in 2023, and the output, when it has reached maximum production, will be an additional 250,000 barrels per day, which should bring the total production to close to 600,000 barrels per day. And so you can predict that by 2024, that is by the end of 2024, Guyana should earn an additional $3 billion from oil and gas sales. That is assuming the price of oil stays where it is at, somewhere around $80 a barrel, right? So by 2024, the end of 2024, the sovereign wealth fund should contain about $5.6 billion, right? 2.6 billion plus 3, $5.6 billion. And if the government keeps extracting $200 million per quarter, you can subtract $800 million from that, you get about $4.8 billion, almost $5 billion by the end of 2024. So the point is that you can predict now the growth of the sovereign wealth fund. And my argument is that the growth of the sovereign wealth fund should be used to tie the value of the Guyana dollar. In other words, you should tie the value of the Guyana dollar to the growth of the sovereign wealth fund. In other words, we should not be using the old model of economic growth in Guyana, which the politicians seem to be addicted to. In other words, they seem to want to keep the value of the Guyana dollar low so that labor would be cheap and they could attract investors based on cheap labor. But we cannot compete with China and India and Vietnam and the rest of Asia on cheap labor, or even Mexico, right? Because they have a larger population than we have. There's endless supply of labor in Asia at a low price. So we cannot compete with a population of less than 1 million people with all of these countries with 1 billion people for cheap labor. So that model of economic growth is obsolete, it is incorrect, we should not be pursuing it. What we should be doing is pursuing a model of economic growth that is similar to the Bahamas and Singapore and Canada, where the value of their dollar is tied to their per capita GDP. Right? So as our GDP grows, or GDP per capita grows, the value, the strength of the Guyana dollar should grow because it reflects the spending power of the Guyanese people. Right? So by that prediction, currently the value of the Canadian dollar is about 71 cents US, sometimes as much as 80 cents, depending on the economic cycle. The value of the Singapore dollar is about 70 cents US, similar to the Canadian dollar, right? It's about 70 cents US. In good times, it's about 80 cents US. The value of the Bahamas dollar is equivalent to the value of the US dollar, is tied to the value of the US dollar. So that is the model of dollar policy we should be pursuing. As the value of our sovereign wealth fund grows, my argument is that we should tie the value of the Guyana dollar to the growth of the sovereign wealth fund. Right? And what that means is that you spread the economic growth, meaning Guyanese will have more spending power globally as the value of the Guyana dollar increases. And that is a better model of economic growth and spreading the wealth than the current model, which seems to be giving cash grants to certain select supporters of the ruling government. Right? Because that only drives inflation. If you let the value of the Guyana dollar grow in strength, what you would do is you drive down inflation and you roll out a pay raise to everyone who earns Guyana dollars inside Guyana. So that is my argument, guys. We can now predict what the sovereign wealth fund will contain as time goes by, because you can use mathematics to do that. And based on the growth of the sovereign wealth fund, we should tie the value of the strength of the Guyana dollar to that fund, to the fund. And so by 2024, the end of 2024, it will be about $5 billion. By the end of 2023, it will be about $2.6 to $3 billion. And therefore, we should see growth in the value of the Guyana dollar based on that rate. That is my idea, guys. If you have any ideas, or if you have any criticism of this idea, leave them in the comments below. How do you think the value of the Guyana dollar being tied to the value of our sovereign wealth fund sounds? Does it sound like a plausible idea? Shouldn't we pursue economic growth in the same terms as Singapore and Canada? Because their value, the value of their money is tied to their gross domestic product per capita. That is my idea, guys. Leave your ideas, your questions in the comments below. If you have criticisms or you support this idea, let people know by commenting below. And share this video with friends and family. Let people know what's happening here in Georgia and Guyana. Later!